today and share some of the updates for the university. This will be likely a little bit shorter briefing than last week, where I went into much greater detail on things that have taken place over the course of the year. I do want to start first by thanking everybody for all the great work that you do. This university is continuing to do well, not just to survive, but to do well as an organization during this pandemic because of all of your efforts. So thank you. This is at a time where we're still going through LCME. This is a time when we're ramping up to start the recruitment for enrollment into next year. And this is a time when we are growing new programs, that many of them aggressive timelines for launching new academic programs in August of 2021. So thank you for everything. I'd like to start by recognizing our grant awardees again for this last period. We've got 5 new grants that have come in through our Office of Sponsored Projects and Research. 2 of those are NIH grants for Dr. Fleming and for Dr. Schofield. And then we have a grant from Ms. Farver from the Ohio Mental Health and Addiction Services Group. And then 2 for our new chairman of psychiatry, Dr. Welton, also both of those from OMAS. So congratulations for the great recognition you're getting for the work that you're doing in your research areas. From a people standpoint, you know, we've been doing a lot to try and really take care of and recognize the members of our team, from our faculty and our staff and our students. Last time I had the opportunity to address this group, I let you know that despite the very difficult economic times with COVID, we were able to do a 1% across the board raise to base salary beginning January 1st. We also went through the process of understanding our staff employees through a consultant called Milliman. Now, Milliman went through and said, do you have your employees properly structured into the right classification system? Do we need to revamp your classification system? And while they're here and getting compensated for the work that they do, is there something we can do to that compensation in order to make them more uniform in the amount that they earn relative to peer groups from across the region? They specifically looked at universities and at community colleges when doing that. And while those universities and community colleges need to do this same process because some of their employees are going to fall inside or outside the pay ranges, either below or above, they hope that the majority of them are going to be roughly in that same level to show that we're competitive. When they went through this process, they did make some recommendations for restructuring. Those aren't going to happen right now, and that's not anything that affects pay over time. It's simply putting job categories into a different classification structure. But they did share with us that about 10%, excuse me, about 10% of our employees would be considered below a particular average pay range for competitors in the area. Now, after we applied the 1% increase to base that's taking place in January, that ends up being about 30 people. And there's some of those are really across the board variations from a few dollars to a couple $1,000s a year. And looking at the difficult economic times that we're in and not really understanding what's going to happen with the pandemic and what's going to happen with state coffers being able to provide us continued SSI at the level that we would like to get it at, but certainly we know it's going to be a reduced level. We've made the decision to phase in these changes over time. So those individuals who are identified by Milliman as being a little below where we'd like them to be are going to see half of that amount that we want to change their compensation to applied to their salaries as of January 1st also, after the 1% increase was put into place. And then we will look at what next year is going to look like. Our hope is that by June, we'll have a good understanding of where the pandemic is going to be and what state support is going to be like. And our intent would then be to schedule the next phase in, which we would hope to be the remainder of the adjustments to salaries to get our team to where we would like them to be. So some of you will see not just a 1% increase to your base salary January 1st. Some of you will see an additional allocation of funds that will be added to your base salaries. So you'll get a little bit more than 1% when that happens. On the people front, the other question we've had has been around the flexible work hour arrangement. Now, the flexible work hour arrangement was really intended for our staff members who are here on business hours, typical business hours, taking care of the operations of the university. There's been a lot of misunderstanding about how does this apply to a faculty member who is a research scientist and an educator. And while you need to be present in the format that it's been scheduled for committee meetings and for teaching, your research time is your research time. We know that's you're putting in many, many hours above and beyond what most people do in an average workday. We are not here to monitor those hours. We know you come in on weekends. Sometimes you come in at 10 at night. Sometimes you're here at 2 in the morning. So there is really no intent that the flexible work hours arrangement, as it's strictly laid out, applies to faculty members. So faculty members have been under a flexible work hour arrangement for decades. This is the way academia operates. Our goal here was to help level the playing field with our staff members, to de-densify the campus for COVID-19, and to take advantage of operational effectiveness and savings by allowing people more flexibility, and at the same time recognizing we have a work-life balance. And days when you do come into campus, we know for some parents it can be difficult if they need to get to a school for a lunch period, or if they need to get off a little bit earlier, so you can shift your time a little bit in each direction or both directions and open up a little extra time around a lunch period or other period that you may need in order to attend something with a child's school requirements. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. I know we had some faculty concerned about restrictions when they're coming in at 10 at night, or they may be here at 3 in the morning. And so really that was not intended for our faculty members. You've been under a flexible work hours arrangement. This was an opportunity to do the same thing at an appropriate level for our staff members. An update on COVID: Portage County has returned to red, but Biomed continues to be in a very good position. So what we're doing is working. Thank you all for doing that. According to Dr. Joe Zerconi this morning, who is our lead COVID physician, we have had no new documented COVID cases since over the last week, and in fact, since I had a chance to address you about 2 weeks ago. We still have 5 members, I believe, students and staff, who've been asked not to come onto campus because of a potential quarantine for potential infection. And so we are managing that, and I think they're doing an outstanding job. I also want to thank our team led by John Boltry in the Department of Community and Family Medicine, and Maria Scheimer in our legal office, and others who've been involved with them for very rapidly helping us get together a new clinic on the 2nd floor of the new MOB building. That clinic is really in its first iteration, so the first 1 to 2 weeks at least, will be a clinic available to students, mostly around COVID-19 issues. The hours will be posted soon in a message out to the community, so watch for this both in email and on Pulse. We have a physician who will be staffing it, and there will be multiple physicians over time staffing it on limited hours in the initial week or two. And we'll plan on doing COVID-19 testing at that location also. Now, the governor's office has told us that we need to do at least 3% of our population every week. That's students, faculty, and staff. And while we are still working out the logistics on how we're going to do that, how we're going to identify people that they've been chosen randomly, and how we're going to schedule them to come in, the good news is the governor's office has also provided us with a new form of testing. The new form of testing requires a nasal swab, but much like an over-the-counter pregnancy test that says either you're pregnant or you're not pregnant, we're able to swab the antigen-based system to get a result in about 8 minutes that you either have COVID or you do not have COVID. Now remember, these tests are not perfect. They're fairly accurate. So if you still have very substantial symptoms that are consistent with COVID-19 and the test says you're negative, we're still likely going to quarantine you or isolate you based on the doctor's recommendation who's in the clinic. But this is something that the state has told us that we need to do. And so we're going to be compliant with the governor's orders. Now, if a member is notified and they're not here, that's okay. We'll just note that that person wasn't here and they'll go back into the mix and they may be selected again in the future. But the intent is to do 3% of our entire population here on the campus. And until the governor lets us know whether we need to do more or less, we're just going to stay compliant with what he's termed his minimum, which is about 3%. Some universities are shooting for a higher level. I don't know that I see the value in it at this time, so we're going to stick with 3% at the university. I know that Ohio State University has stated they're going to test 100% of their students and some large number of their faculty and staff every week, and they've been trying to do so. I just don't know that it's really going to do much for us. To get those numbers in place, I think we would have a very difficult time. It would be incredibly expensive, and I don't think it will change what we do on this campus. So for now, we're going to stick with 3%. The other issue related to COVID-19 are changes that will be communicated soon. I'm giving you a slight preview right now. So if you have a lot of questions on this at the end, some of those I won't be able to answer until we get the information out from our COVID-19 management team. But we are going to be changing things a little bit near the end of this semester. So when students and staff and faculty have an opportunity to have a break around the Thanksgiving period, as we always do, we still have to come back for generally about a 2-week period of time. That 2-week period of time is when testing occurs. And depending on how the deans have elected to perform testing, or students may be required to finish up some small group sessions or some laboratories, they're going to determine what our footprint looks like on campus. What we expect to do is to significantly de-densify the campus after Thanksgiving and then rolling into the winter holiday break period, so that from the period of coming back after Thanksgiving until the end of the semester, we will not be back on campus at the level we are now. It'll be substantially reduced, and more information will come to you on how that's going to impact your attendance at the university. Our goal is to get it very limited. And the real reason for this is we know that people travel over Thanksgiving. Some of our students and some of our faculty and some of our staff will either have visitors in their home from outside of our region, or will be going to visit family and friends outside of our region and then coming back themselves. And we know that this has an opportunity of increasing a higher COVID positivity rate. So we're going to very limited operations after Thanksgiving. For next semester, coming back after the holiday break, we're going to do something very similar over about a 10-day to 2-week period of time. So please stand by for those communications. I just wanted to share with you today that we are planning to do this, and the COVID-19 team working with the academic deans are putting a plan together that they will share with everybody. We're doing great, even with this hybrid model and some periodic reduction in our footprint on the campus. I had an update today with over 40 members of the Biomed team sharing the great things that are going on across this campus, and we continue to do very, very well. In fact, it was shared with me today that we'll be having our November LCME site visit practice we'll be ready for our LCME limited site visit in February. We are well underway with recruitment and enrollment for this year. College of Medicine reported that they had about 4,100 applicants already. Typically, we finish, when what I've heard from our head of enrollment, Mr. Barrett, was that this time last year, we would have been closer to about 2,300. So really big uptick in the number of applicants. So this is going to be a really good year for us as we continue to build upon our strategic plan, focus on quality student initiatives, focus on leadership initiatives, and focus on growth of new programs at this university. For those of you who've been on campus more frequently in the last week or so, you'll notice there's been an uptick in the total population here. You only really see that based on the parking lot numbers. It's still fairly quiet as you walk around the campus, but Biomed in some form of a hybrid model has come back onto the campus into the new building space. And then our strategic plan is well underway. We're working with a large number from across the organization to operationalize that. And that's going to be tied to our fiscal year 2022 budgeting process. And I've shared that we're moving to a zero-based budget. And I know that's created some anxiety with people who've heard the term and they're not quite sure what it means. But I want you to please rest assured that the term is just it's another term for budgeting. It's really not going to be onerous. It's really it's a process that makes us think about where our dollars go. A question I got was, well, if we start at zero-based and we have faculty and staff who work for us, how do we deal with that? Well, you take care of our faculty and our staff. We figure out what they cost us, and you put that and apply it to your budget. And then for non-personnel services, we look at where we spend our money to make sure we're spending it in a way that it's going to optimize our organization and that it's going to also allow us to grow in the direction that we have uniformly come together and say we want to grow under the strategic plan. So it's a very good process for us to use. And I know terminology can be daunting sometimes, but zero-based budgeting is really not. It's just makes us think a little bit different as we put our budgets together. And my final thing is that many of you are aware that we've had over this past weekend some visitors on our campus, and we'll have some more. Our diversity team led by Andre Burton has been stepping up to assist our local community in dealing with racism issues. For those who've read the press or heard my remarks on this in the past, we have had problems across the street at Rootstown High School. There was a particular incident that's been noted and in the news regarding a sports team and some racist comments that were made. This has now really gone all the way up to the school board level. The school board has brought in leadership from the NAACP and others to help them do an investigation. And in the meantime, Neomed is contributing by adding our resources here at the university in the form of space and in the form of personnel to help teach them things that we've all learned and that we are practicing here on this campus, and that is how to value diversity, how to ensure equity and inclusion, and how to create a culture that is anti-racist. So thank you, Mr. Burton, for all that you're doing for us along those lines. And finally, things will get better. We don't know when the pandemic's going to finally wrap up and life's going to return to a much more normal level for us, but there are clear signs out there that things will get better. All you have to do is look at the Browns. I think that's 4 wins now. So miracles do happen, and miracles are going to happen for us too. So thank you very much for your time. It's an absolute pleasure to be part of the Neomed team and to continue to see the great accomplishments that are coming out of this organization because of you. So I'll open it up to any questions.
Yes, the first question is regarding the individuals being underpaid. Will you be identified if you're in that percentage of people?
So we were going to make additions to your paycheck. I don't know if the HR team was specifically going to reach out and tell you, but I certainly don't have any objections to that. I wouldn't look at it as necessarily being underpaid. I would say that you're not where we would like you to be relative to the standard population. There are going to be people who are also paid at this level at those other organizations. It's that, you know, curve where we're looking across the board at where people fall and trying to stay within the 5% rule, where there's 2.5% outside of the normal curve. But our goal is to get you there. And some people about 30 people are going to see an impact. And it's going to be done uniformly in the same way for everybody. 50% correction to take place, which will be across an annual salary amount. And then we're going to look to try and correct that again sometime in the neighborhood of, it'll either be July or the following January. And that's really going to depend on our economics. What do our finances look like because of the pandemic and because of the state cuts?
John Hopkins in the New York Times reported that Biomed had 11 COVID cases. Are those students and are people being made aware if it is in their department?
So we've had likely 11 cases over the course of the entire pandemic that we're aware of. Many of those cases were with students who were in their clinical years and who are not here on our campus. And everybody has been made aware. So we don't have 11 cases right now. In fact, I'm not aware of any current positive cases right now. We've had some over the last month, about 4, and we've got some people who are in quarantine and are not coming onto campus. But yes, if somebody has it, they know they have it, and the Department of Health undergoes contact tracing with them, and they reach out to any potential contacts to interview them and determine whether they need to be quarantined or whether they need to be tested.
Will Biomed students and staff fall into that category of getting randomly tested for COVID? Will anyone enforce Biomed students not wearing masks when on campus?
We will certainly enforce Biomed students wearing masks on campus. I will tell you, we've not been asked to, and I'm not sure we can mandate the screening since they don't fall under us at the university. And the governor's rules were for institutions of higher education. We can look into this and at least offer it. I suspect that we will not be able to mandate it for that population. They would be much like Farrell Whitehead, which is a separate entity on our campus, and we really can't reach out and tell them they have to be tested. We can offer and ask if they're willing to, but no way to really mandate that at this point.
Sequoia asks if you have had a COVID test in the last 14 days when entering the gym. If you are given a random test, how should somebody respond?
Well, the answer would be yes. If you've been given a random test, even with that random test, you'll be told your results. And in fact, with this new testing methodology that we've been given by the state, you'll know your results within, according to the manufacturers, 8 to 10 minutes. So your answer would be yes. And then they're going to want to know, is it positive or negative? And if it's negative, then obviously you're going to come right in. And if it's positive, they're going to tell you that you need to leave.
Will managers receive training on zero-based budgeting?
Yes. Starting with the executive management team to make them comfortable. But Mary Taylor, who is our VP for Finance and Operations, and her team will be putting training in place for managers to understand how it's done. It's really not as complicated as it might sound.
The final question, how does President Trump's executive order restricting diversity training for organizations that receive federal funding impact our diversity initiatives? Are we exempt, or because we receive federal financial aid, are we required to follow it? No,
so we are not doing the type of training that the executive order mandated cease if you were going to continue to receive federal funding. That type of training, I'm not going to get into the politics of it and have a discussion on what people think. but it's not a type of training that we are doing here at this organization.
There are no any more questions.
Well, thank you very much. Have a wonderful week, and I look forward to being able to speak to you again and give you another update in just a couple of weeks